I'd like to spend today just going over today's quiz together. That's all. In this first set of slides, this first video, we'll look at the first, 6 questions, I think, which have to do with this steel column on top of a base plate on top of a concrete footing. So in this first question, we are given a load of 120,000 pounds sitting on top of this steel column. We're told that this particular column has an allowable stress of 13,500 psi, and we're supposed to find the area of the steel column so that we can go on and do other stuff. Okay, so if we know the load and the stress, how do we find the area? Well, if we want to use our triangle method, we'll cover up the A. We're left with an equation in this form, load over stress, so 120,000 over 13,500. That will tell us how big an area we need for this wide flange column. So what? Well, that will let us look up in our steel tables and find out what size of 8-inch wide flange will we need that will give us at least that much area. So let's look at our tables. This is the same steel handout that we looked at last time. Here's the page that has 8-inch wide flange on it again. And as before, I'll zoom in on the 8-inch part. So you just figured out how much area you're going to need for this 8-inch wide flange. And now you'll look in this area column and you'll see which one of these is at least that big. It could be bigger area, it just can't be smaller. So if you came up with, I think you came up with 8.889 square inches, something like that. So if you look down here at a little one, an 8 by 10 inch wide flange, that only has an area of 2.96 square inches. No way is that big enough. So you start moving up the choices here. How about this one? 8 by 28, does that have at least 8.889 square inches? No, it doesn't, so that's not big enough. So you keep moving up until you find one that is at least big enough. Now that we've selected our column, now let's look at how big a steel base plate we need. So we have 120,000 pounds of force sitting on top of our column still. And we're trying to figure out how big does this base plate need to be. And to think about that, we need to know what is the deal with the concrete underneath that base plate. You'll notice this is a different looking sort of number than we've seen with steel. This number says the concrete underneath here has an allowable stress of 450 psi. Okay. How big is the base plate? So let's figure out the area we need. We've got 120,000 pounds of force. We've got an allowable stress of 450 psi, and we're trying to find the area. So once again, we'll cover up A in our triangle, and our configuration for our formula will be area equals force over stress. And probably you will come up with 266 2/3 square inches. That's how many square inches of area you need in order not to cause failure in that concrete. Now in this question we need to find the size. So you might be good at this. I'm not necessarily. I think kind of slowly, and when I'm faced with a thing like this, what I sometimes like to do is make up a sample problem that I'm pretty sure I could solve and try to find the pattern. So let's try that. We have an area of 266 2/3. That's how many square inches. How big is that on a side? Well, let's think about a square that we did know, maybe with a simple number that we could probably maybe even do out of our heads. So what if somebody told you there was a square that had 9 square inches in it? How would you figure out how big it was on each side? Well, hopefully you'd begin to realize, oh, I need to take the square root of 9 square inches. That will tell me that it's 3 inches on a side. So 3 inches times 3 inches will give me 9 square inches. And I found that by finding the square root of 9. Let's do another one we might be able to think of. What if you had a square where you knew the area was 16 square inches? Okay, I'm pretty sure that 4 times 4 is 16. How do I get there? Well, if 16 is the area, and I'm trying to get to 4, looks like I would take the square root of 16 square inches, and I would get to 4 inches. So my square here is going to be 4 inches times 4 inches. Okay, so now I have the pattern. I could also, you know what I probably would do is I would get out one of my math textbooks and just look it up. So now there's the pattern. We're going to take the square root of the square inches to find the size. And our square inches is 266 2/3. So how would we find the size? Using the pattern we just established. We would go square root of 266 2/3, and we would get whatever the size is supposed to be. Okay, now going on, working our way down, going on to the concrete footing, and in question 5, we're told that the allowable soil bearing pressure, which means the stress, the allowable soil bearing stress is 3,000 pounds per square foot. And we're trying to figure out how big an area of concrete footing would allow us to not to exceed that allowable stress. So let's do this. We know the force. We still have 120,000 pounds coming down. What else do we know? We know the stress. Alrighty. I would just point out here, this is the first time we've encountered a stress that's not given in PSI. This is not pounds per square inch. This one is pounds per square foot. Well, no problem. This is in pounds per square foot, so let's just find how much area we need in square feet. And then we'll figure out what size of footing we need in feet. So no problem. Okay, so we're looking for the area. We've got force and stress. Let's find area. We'll cover up the A in our triangle. And we'll have this configuration again, area equals force over stress. So that will tell us the area. And hopefully, you will have come up with an area that you need of 40 square feet. Your question now is, that's great, how big do you make the formwork for this square footing? If you need 40 square feet, how big is it on a side? Well, here's our pattern that we worked out earlier. If you know that the area is 40, let's take the square root of 40, and that will tell us how big each side will be. And just to make sure we remember, you're going to find a size in feet. So here's the area in square feet. The square root of that 40 square feet will give you a size in feet. And it'll be whatever it is, how many feet on a side. So there are the first few problems of our quiz.